p.m. This is the meeting of the Board of Trustees Legislative Advocacy Committee. And we're going to first begin to see if there's any public comment on non-agenda items. I do not believe there is any public comment on anything today. Great. Next is approval of minutes, May 22, 2023. These minutes didn't have quorum for that meeting. So can we just receive and file, or vote to?
Yeah, I was not in attendance.
I was not either.
So.
I approve it.
Steve, you can vote.
Unilaterally. In a way, we
I'm
didn't
not
have
sure
the meeting. We did not have an official meeting, is I think
Okay.
what we would say.
Then
Yeah.
let's consider that received and filed for those minutes.
Yeah, let's do that.
Great. Next is approval of minutes for September 25, 2023.
Second.
I need a motion.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay.
Apologies. I would like to move to approve the minutes on September 25th.
Great.
Second.
The second from Trustee Gibson. Mr. Interesting. All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Aye for me as well. Next is section B, legislative updates. We'll begin with update on state issues.
Before we do that, Trustee Whitney, sorry, I just want to take a moment to, for the record, introduce Bellefontaine Nunn
Yes.
from Associate Students. You might have taken care of this before you came in the room, but I just want to have it show that she is Associate Students. Tell me your title again.
Vice President of General Affairs.
Vice President of Student Affairs. She'll be here talking about our second activities. So we're invited at the pleasure of the college.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Welcome.
Happy to have you here, Belle. Great. So we'll go on to update on state issues.
And I think we're going to turn that over to Carol Gonzalez from our folks in Sacramento from Strategic Education Services. Carol, we're bringing you up. We see you, and I imagine there's some slides too. Do you need us to drive, or are you going to bring them up?
Yes, I could either share my screen or happy to have you all share whatever's easiest.
I think it's whatever you're most comfortable with. So you tell us.
All right, I'll share my screen.
Perfect.
If you can disable
Thanks.
that.
Let's fix that. Try again.
Awesome.
We are good. Thank you.
Awesome. So thank you so much for having us. My name is Carl Gonzalez, and I have Sabrina Means here from the team. David unfortunately couldn't make it today, but we're happy to see all of you trustees. And whatever's easiest for you, if you'd like us to stop between slides, we're happy to do so if you have any questions. Or we can do it at the end, whatever is easiest. Happy to do whatever's easiest for you, the group.
Just, I guess, proceed. If anybody has questions, we'll make sure to stop you. Thank you.
Okay, awesome. I'm gonna get started and then I'll hand it over to Sabrina in between and we'll just tag team throughout the presentation. So since we haven't seen you all for a while, there are a few changes to the economic status of California. As many of you might be aware, the tax deadline was pushed earlier this year from April to October and then later to November. And because it was pushed back, 50 of the 58 counties hadn't submitted officially their taxes, or at least they had the option to delay submitting their expenses. Therefore, the LAO, the Legislative Analyst Office, anticipates that there will be a $26 billion deficit for this past 2022 budget. Because of that, the overall budget outlook for the next 3 years looks like it will also be in the reds, unfortunately, and it's looking like it will be 58 below those estimates. And then just as a FYI, the governor has to submit his budget proposal by January 10. Usually they would use these estimates as a way to reflect and really plan out for the next year. And because the filing deadline was pushed back so far to November 15th, from what we understand, Department of Finance is having a bit of a struggle trying to fit this context into the governor's budget plan for next year. I'm going to go to the next slide. Because of the deficit, And the way that the Proposition 98 looks for next year, it's going to be under a test 1 year. What that means is that the money that goes into Prop 98, 40% of each dollar will impact both K-12 and community colleges. And just as a FYI for all of you, community colleges receive about 11% of the revenues from Prop 98. And because of the deficit, the LAO also anticipates the cost of living adjustment to be 1.7. If you all recall, last year's was one of the highest COLA that we've had. It was about 8.2. And earlier, the governor's budget proposal in January of last year, he anticipated it being 8.1. So there might be changes to this COLA. Again, this is just projections, but we just wanted to let you all know what the LAO has shared. And because of the budget deficit, we did want to share just updated numbers on what the reserves will look like. The budget did have overall 37.8 billion reserves. Some of that money, 22.3 billion, is in the Prop 2 Rainy Day Fund. 10.8 is in the Public School System Stabilization Account for Prop 98. However, in order to use that, the governor and legislature have to determine that there's a budget emergency in order to use that funding. So we'll see whether or not they feel like it's necessary to trigger that need. There's also 900 million in the safety net reserve and 3.8 billion in the state operating reserve. So before I jump to policy, are there any questions on budget?
Pretty bleak news, but any questions from any committee members? Okay.
Did the LAO have any COLA projections previously, or is this their first projection?
This is the first one that we see that was in writing.
I have a question in terms of the, I understand they are some of these numbers are projections because they're just getting the money in. I mean, some of these numbers could change, right?
Of course, yes. And we'll see something more tangible January 10th, but even then we think there'll be a lot more revision going into the governor's May revision. So there'll be a larger span of time between January and May, where we might see additional changes.
Do we know what the COLA is referencing to here? Is it like, obviously last time we were having a fight over expanding into other categorical things. This is just the base COLA?
Yeah, so far we've only heard that it's related to the base
Okay,
COLA.
thank you.
We haven't heard anything about categoricals yet.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Awesome. So I'm going to hand it over to Sabrina to go through policy.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, thank you.
Oh, wonderful. Thanks for having us here. I'm Sabrina. I work with Carol and David, and I'm just going to briefly go over some bills that PCC has taken a position on that technically are still alive and could move going forward, just to remind you a little bit about what you've worked on the last session. So AB 506 Fong having to do with the ethnic studies requirement for CSU. This establishes a comprehensive workbook for the 1460 ethnic studies course approval process, required for review of previously approved courses. It was held in committee. It's now a 2-year bill, and Pasadena Community College previously had a support position on this bill, but it changed to a watch position due to some significantly more stipulations that were put on the requirements for ethnic studies. So right now we do have it as a watch, and we're going to keep an eye on it to see how things evolve with it. So I just wanted to keep that on your radar. The next one, AB 247 by Sushi. This one is the TK through 14 Education Facilities Bond Act. This became a 2-year bill along with several other bond bills. Due to the fact that the governor wanted to make it a priority that the mental health bond was on the ballot for March and not be crowded out by other bond bills. So this is still a work in progress, and what it would do is it would provide $14 billion for TK through 12 and community college facilities construction and modernization. So again, that is still moving, and it could maybe do some evolution over the next session, but the reason it was held back is just because it was specifically a bond bill. Next, we have AB 610 by Assemblymember Holden. As you guys know, this has to do with student transit passes, while the author was hoping this would get through, it's been introduced several times before. It was held, the author decided to make it inactive to give it another chance over this next session. So I know that this has continued to be an interest for Pasadena Community College, and so we will continue to have conversations with the Department of Finance, Transit Association, and others to see what the possibility of this is to go forward. In a challenging budget year, it may be tricky, but that doesn't mean that the conversation can't still keep moving forward, so we can keep you updated on that. And then AB 1370, having to do with workforce development, that one was held under suspense, so I believe it was a budgetary issue or financial reasons that it was held, but technically still alive, and we'll keep you updated if the author decides to bring it back and if it changes form or not. And lastly, AB 689 by Carrillo. This one had to do with health sciences departments or programs having to reserve a specified quota for enrollment, and the PCC was opposed to this bill along with the league, and it was held also on suspense, and so we need to find out if the author intends to bring it back or not, but it was an opposition bill, and it's the only one on our list right now that we haven't as opposed in the past. So I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, just wanted to review what could still be forward going into this next year.
Yep, Sabrina, this is Jim. I do have a question on the bill that's on the screen right now. Do we have a position on this one?
I'm sorry, which one?
AB 689.
This one was the opposed bill that PCC opposed last year, along with the league, the California Community Colleges League.
Okay, and why are we opposing this one?
I'm happy to speak to that.
Yeah.
This bill would require us to set aside, I believe, 15% of spaces in healthcare programs for folks who currently work in healthcare and go from a janitor to a billing agent to a nurse. While that's a nice idea, it would represent a pretty significant step as far as reserving spaces for certain people. And we were concerned that that was just going to be a step we didn't want to take. I forget, Sabrina, was there more to it than that? I forget where it ended up on that.
That was the gist of it.
Okay, thank you.
So back on,
Okay.
I have another question. AB 610, the Holden bill.
Mhm.
Is there funding attached to this?
So it would incur an extra cost to the state in order to, I guess, mandate free student transit passes for students statewide. And so it's been a bit of a touchy issue because transit agencies are already challenged financially. There was what they call a transit fiscal cliff this last session, and they were able to get money out of the budget, through the budget, this past budget, that gave them more money to rescue them, so to speak, and they were able to start using capital monies for operations. So they're still kind of walking a tightrope. So this would put additional pressure on them to provide passes for students. But I know that there's a lot of interest in this bill, especially by community colleges. And so even though the Transit Association might have a little bit of hesitancy, we've had some conversations with the Department of Finance about it, and while they're hesitant on it as well, that doesn't mean that the conversation won't continue. And it's been a priority of Assemblymember Holden for a while now, and I think it's because there's so much interest by several different areas of the state. So again, they made it inactive last year just to keep it from dying, so to speak, so that conversations can still happen going forward.
Thank you. Continue.
Any other questions?
Oh, I think we're good.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll pass it back to Carol for the next slide.
Thanks, Sabrina.
So very quickly, we just wanted to share a quick overview of what to expect next year for the second year of the legislative cycle. The legislature will reconvene January 3rd. If we decide to work on any legislation or anything of that sort, these are just key deadlines to keep an eye out on. I did mention that the governor does announce his proposed budget January 10th. Although that's not a legislative deadline, we just wanted to throw that out there. And then the Budget Act is through legislation, so we'll have a updated budget by June 15th. And then we'll have a final say on legislation September 30th. We did want to share some leadership changes in case we haven't been able to catch up since then. We do have a new speaker in the Assembly, Assemblymember Robert Rivas. Through his new leadership, he also did some changes to some key committees, both in the budget and regular policy committees. I did want to note that Assemblymember Holden, who was chair of appropriations, is no longer chair of approps as of about 2-3 weeks maybe. The new chair is Assemblymember Buffy Wicks from Oakland. I know we've had a long-standing relationship with the chair, Holden, and given his turnover, we hope to establish new relationships with some of the new leaders. We just wanted to also highlight that Assemblymember Jesse Gabriel from Woodland Hills is the new chair of the Budget Committee, and Assemblymember David Alvarez is the new chair of the Budget Subcommittee on Education and Finance. Since we sent this PowerPoint earlier today, we didn't have an idea of when the transition for the Senate side would happen, but earlier today we received a message that February 5th will be the day of the transition on the Senate side, where Pro Tem designee Senator McGuire will take over from Senator Pro Tem Atkins. So we anticipate that there'll be more transitions going into next year, where there might be new chairs on the Senate side, both on the budget and policy committees. So more to come. We just wanted to let you know as we start to plan things for next year.
Carol, really quickly on that slide in terms of the changes in leadership. Yes, there are new committee chairs, and when Speaker Rivas announced that a couple weeks ago, but for the committees that did not have new chairs, is it that the existing chairs will continue in their roles?
Yes. We did hear that some of the folks might shift around as in committee membership, as in who sits on the committees. So as we see those updates, we'll share them with you, but it seems like Assemblymember Mike Fong and Assemblymember Mark Succi will be keeping their seats for now on the Assembly side.
That is my
Early
question.
addition.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Lewis?
Yeah, and Assemblymember Fong is also on Budget Subcommittee too, right?
I believe so, yes.
So he's on Educational Finance.
Yeah, and because he has a history of being a trustee, he's very, he's always been kind of a community college advocate, so we're really looking forward to working with him again next year.
Thank you.
And then just to recap a little bit with the legislation on the budget, as we go into 2024, we're just really keeping an eye on legislation, and then based on what we've heard and what we've seen, if there are any asks, we're just really trying to be considerate and see what carries a significant weight for leadership. We anticipate some of the new chairs and leaders will want to push more of their priorities, but because this is all new leadership, we're just really in for the ride to figure out what kind of keeps the top of their priority list. And we're going to see how that categorical will apply and where that COLA will lie, but for right now, just the regular base COLA is 1.7. So I just wanted to just reemphasize that as we think about what our priorities are for next year, of which I'll let Sabrina kind of tie it all together.
Thank you. So the last couple slides are what can BCC do. So we definitely want to work with you on helping advocate for existing and new legislation, any small legislative fixes that would benefit the college. And we can also submit small budget requests through legislators. But ideally that would be $1 million or less since it is a challenging budget year and also to avoid budgetary constrictions. So what would be really helpful for us on the next slide is opportunities for advocacy. So what really helps is if you could put together, or we can help you, or however, your legislative priorities for going into the next session, so that we can have something, specifically to work with, especially for doing a lobby day in January. It really helps if we have something with us when we meet legislators to talk about specifically what their priorities are for the year. So we'd love to work with you over the next few weeks to nail that down, however it looks. And then also, we'd like to get an idea from you on who we'd like to meet with during the lobby day. And there's always an option for an additional lobby day in April or May, as the budget continues to be rolled out. So I'd love to have you continue to communicate with me and or Carol and David about, especially as we put together the lobby day in January, who you'd like to meet with, et cetera, et cetera. And then also, I know that last year there was some really great student advocates involved with the lobby day as well, and we'd love to have them again and also work with them on setting up meetings or cooperate with them however it works best for you guys. So basically that's it in terms of we'd love to just keep the conversation going in terms of advocacy.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions for Strategic Education Services?
I have some, I think, simple questions about some bills that were signed. SB 544, the Open Meetings Act. I'm wondering if that changed anything about our meeting requirements.
This was signed in chapter.
Yeah, that's what it's on that list,
Yeah.
signed in chapter.
I can look more into exactly how that particular piece of legislation changed the meeting requirements. I do know that there was a lot of cleanup legislation this cycle that sort of took what was emergentarily imposed during COVID to then make it more permanent. But if you'd like a more fine-grained analysis, please.
Thanks. The only other one is probably a simple answer too. AB 1541, the thong was Community College Governing Board student trustees. I'm assuming nothing changes with us because I think we already comply with that. It's saying that for all community colleges, student trustees should have an advisory vote. I think we already have that.
I think the way it finally ended up, yeah, we were already in compliance. But Sabrina or Carol, 1541 was the AB 1541 was the student trustee. Do you remember how that one shaped the student trustee role?
I don't have that one, the detail on that one. Carol, do you have any detail on that?
Yeah, I believe it was just an advisory vote, which your board already applies. But I can look more into it in case there's something that I might have missed and that Alex can pass on to you.
Thank you. That's it.
Thank you. Any other questions? Dr. Douglas?
So the budget request, is that something you should have a conversation about here? This is the last meeting before.
Yeah, I think the idea here today, to move on, was to talk about, we just saw the need, the request basically from the folks in Sacramento to supply them with some information that they feel comfortable bringing forward to our legislators. There was basically a $1 million ceiling, and we have some proposals that we talked about on the staff level here. We want to bring you the best idea we have and just get your assent to move that forward with the lobbyists.
Not necessarily the best idea.
Well, the one that rose to our...
An idea that staff has become enthusiastic about.
I was comfortable with.
All right, in that case, I just wanted to close out really quickly, so thank Are they staying on for this next?
I think they'd like to hear this.
Oh, they're
part.
great, great,
Yeah.
great. But thank you for the presentation. We're gonna move to the next item, budget request, so.
Sure. Thanks. Just to continue the conversation, generally speaking, obviously difficult budget year. I think we should walk into this knowing what we might be able to reasonably expect from a carve-out request, just so we can start the conversation on the same page. It's also the case that while $1 million will certainly change anyone's life, it's certainly not a large number in terms of our own budget. So we should have some reasonable expectations about what that would do here on campus. Thinking about all that we have and all we could ask for, we think I'll use my adjectives here, the most reasoned request we could make would be to allocate and acquire equipment, supplies, funding for the Culinary Arts program. That's a strong and growing program we have here. It's got a great location in our actually working kitchen in the piazza. And at the same time, there's room to do more always. It's a strong workforce program. It is very CTE heavy. And we've had previous experience tying that to local businesses as far as educating their workforce to be able to move on to the next level or something. So we would like to propose here that we move that forward to the lobbyists as a subject for a carve-out request. And I don't know if we need a formal vote on that or if it's just a sense of the committee, but that's kind of where we are.
I'll move that the committee make that recommendation.
A second.
Any discussion?
Yeah, go ahead.
No, I would love to hear a little bit more about what is the need that currently exists for the program, and how it is filled.
We currently do not have a real location for our culinary arts program. So we've been searching for a spot, and obviously it's expensive. And really, with our current plans, it's some time down the line with our facilities enhancements and improvements. This would provide some, like Alex said, much needed equipment that would allow us to, or at least some of the conversations, reconfigure the Lancer Pass area into a culinary arts training area. But of course, we would need the equipment, which is incredibly expensive, and there would be some construction that would need to get to happen. And now, $1 million really doesn't solve the problem because it's very, very expensive. But we have a fantastic culinary arts program that's just sharing space with Primo Nosh,
Yeah.
and it's really not the best situation. So that might.
Dr. Gomez, what is the location that you just mentioned that it would be moved to?
So Lancer Pass, I've seen it, but I don't know all
If you walk down past the Center for the Arts in the B building, it's that building to the right between you and the swimming pool. It's a cafeteria. I think is it open?
No.
Yeah.
It's been
closed for a
It's
while.
been dark
Yeah.
since COVID, I
I
think.
believe it used to be a Starbucks, and it used to be, there's like a sign that says Starbucks. So I believe that used to be where it's on.
It used to become the culinary arts program location.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think there was lots of things in there, right?
It was a grab and go. There's some hot food. It was a centrally located, smaller version of the cafeteria.
So even though it's closed down now, there's still some equipment there, or pretty much need to be re-equipped from ground up?
I believe it would be a pretty quick situation. I don't know for sure and have no other information, but it's certain, there's a lot of need there, I think, to get things moving.
And this $1 million is, how much is really needed? How much of a bite out of the total cash?
I don't know if we have a formal estimate as far as that transition or transformation could be, categorized. I imagine it's going to be a piece of the puzzle.
Okay, because I think that we're very thoughtful about splitting the costs into two buckets. One bucket is equipment, and the other is facilities. That second bucket we can do from our facilities fund. And, the difference between a fixture or a tenant improvement, which should be a facility, right, versus equipment, which is not typically fixed to the property, and therefore can't be from our facilities. And what I'm saying is if we can get as much as possible out of our facilities, because that funding is there, then the million will go further for what truly is equipment.
Thank you. Any other thoughts, comments? Great, so we have a motion and a second. It even needs a formal vote, but we'll do it anyway. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? None, carries. So that sounds like a great recommendation, and I'm sure you'll confer with our friends on the line after that.
Certainly. Thank you very much.
Cool, thank you. Glad we're moving forward with the request, even if whether or not we get it. Okay, so our next item under legislative updates is update on federal issues. Alex?
Yes, thank you. As always, this is always the lightest agenda item on these dockets because we don't have a very strong federal presence. But I would like to spend a minute talking about our meeting with Judy Chu that we had recently, where it was a chance for Dr. Evans to get in touch with her. So I don't know if you want to provide an impromptu summary of that conversation.
Yeah, well, we spoke about a lot of the announcements and celebrations that are going to be taking place in the next month. One having to do with the 10-year anniversary of the Small Business Development Center, and then also the presentation of the $100,000 check to the Veterans Affairs group. But we also spoke about her support for veterans. We actually had a meeting with the commander of the Veterans for Foreign Wars. Was it last week? Yeah, was it last week?
Yeah, the state commander.
Yeah, state commander. And Judy Chu's staff was there, as well as Grace Napolitano's staff, and we were having conversations about how to get additional resources into our Veterans Resource Center from our congressional representatives. That was essentially what the meeting was about.
The only other thing to mention is we did receive that grant from, she got us a for $500,000 for the Family Resource Center,
right.
And we are working to find a date.
I think they're thinking like March-ish.
Yeah, sometime in our
March-ish.
spring semester.
Like a more formal
Celebrate,
celebration.
call it ribbon cutting, call it
Right.
an unveiling of some sort.
Right.
Coming up next year.
Awesome.
Other than that, the only other federal update ties into the next agenda item, which is the visit to DC in February.
Great.
So
So
let's
let's-
that.
Is there any thoughts from trustees or committee members on that? Okay, great. So let's go to 2024 conference travel. Of course, we have our, and I know it was listed on one of the slides earlier, the January travel to Sacramento for the CCLC, and then ACCT in February.
I think as always at this time of year, we would like to open up the conversation about who plans to go, so we can sort of start planning the logistics of it. I did hear our lobbyists talk about a need to understand who we'd like to see, and that's why we have our students here today, because they're going to coordinate with us to figure out who we might visit. And then if there is any legislative issues that are coming up to the board's mind, I think we want to just verbalize those at this point, so we can sort of have a policy orientation. Just so it's half logistics, half strategy, probably.
I've already, thanks to Audrey, already made my ticket purchases, so I plan on going to both of that. I don't know. Both.
I'll go to state, but not federal.
I'm planning to go to state, and I'm not sure yet about federal, to be determined.
And you're both.
Perfect. And I know in the past that was for federal, we coordinated with Glendale. I don't know if we would do that again, or
It's a convenient way to do it,
Right.
because we are of the same area, we have a lot of the same representation.
That's true.
And we often have delegation in as well there, so if you're open to that, I think we should continue.
for Washington, that makes perfect sense, since
Right.
the districts are so much larger.
Yeah, I strongly recommend that for Washington. That'll get us in the meetings doing that job.
Although last year, did you go to the meeting with Senator Padilla? His name, Senator Padilla, was not very productive because it was it you? I think it was you.
I was there. It was interesting. It wasn't like going into their office and speaking with them. It was a
a
very large room with everybody around the perimeter. Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. 'Cause it-
Well, most of the federal issues are macro level
It is,
issues,
yeah.
like Pell Grants and. you know.
But I will say this, in years past, quite often, let's say with Feinstein and definitely with Kamala Harris, we would not meet with the senator. We would meet with their education staff, and they were usually, Feinstein's educational staff person was amazing. That guy knew more about what we needed than we did. And so that was very productive, but we didn't get to meet with the senators. So, I mean, we did get to meet with Senator Padilla, so
It's a mix of both,
it's a
yeah.
different format, but he was actually there. Yeah.
What I would ask is that when we are coordinating our office visits, that they happen in, like on a day, because I know these things are over
Yeah.
several days, because I know that I will likely not be able to be gone for,
Yeah.
the entire time, so.
So, Alex, it's probably the same format as prior years, and it's Saturday, Sunday, our conference, right?
We start
Pardon me, Sunday, Monday, our
Or
conference.
Sacramento.
I'm talking about Washington.
Right.
And then Tuesday is.
So this is this day, correct?
Yeah. So in Washington, it's usually that Tuesday,
So you can set-
and so you can. And then Sacramento, it's Saturday, Sunday, and
Monday.
Saturday's pre-conference, Sunday's the day, and then Monday.
then Monday is, right, Monday is the, for the capital.
I think the only, in terms of scheduling, I think last year there was a little bit of a mix-up because we walked into the swing space and we ran into a Assembly member Fall, and he asked us if we had a meeting with him, and we thought it wasn't happening, so thankfully I was able to jump in that meeting with, I can't remember who joined me, but it was just a little awkward, and thankfully he's very understanding, but hopefully we wouldn't have that scheduling snafu this time around.
Sorry that it's your memory.
No, not at all. It was great. It was at the same time too with our meeting with Assembly Member Holden. But certainly we wouldn't want to stand at the chair of the Higher Education Committee. So I'm glad we did it, but I just want to make sure we watch out for that. And for Sacramento, I know last year we had a great group of students come with us. I want to make sure that we're still able to do that this year.
I think we have Bella and Mary here to talk about how they plan to
Great,
participate this
please.
time around.
Yeah, well, I'll be planning to do the ACCT and CCLC. And I'm pretty sure Belle as well, you're going to ACCT and CCLC. I'm not completely sure, is the whole lobby committee going to both of them?
Most of, I'm going to be the only one going to ACCT, but the members who are able to go for CCLC are only 4. But that's still like quite a few members, plus Irene, who's another AS representative, who also was on lobby committee last year, so she has experience and would be, I guess you'd say, considered another lobby committee member. We don't know exactly who we really want to see, so I think total is like 8 students, 7, 8 students.
Yeah. This is for Sacramento.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, that's plenty.
That's great.
That's very good. That's a good showing.
I think that's totally, and please just confer with Alex and the team about how to play that out. I know for the visits that we do, probably Avery will join us. I know we like to have students in our conversation too, because they don't want to hear from us and they want to hear from you all instead, so.
Last year, we worked really closely with the lobby committee, and I think even tried to find a way to split up and sort of hit 2 things at once. We could schedule more. Is the board committee open to the idea of going in 2 different groups, or would you like to try to stay united as much as you could?
I know last year there were members that they met with that we didn't meet with, which is okay, because there's folks they wanted to talk to. I think the only, in terms of splitting up, like the trustees, I would say we probably shouldn't do that. And we should be in the meetings at least for the folks that represent us,
Yes.
which would be, I guess, Fallon, Holden, Portino, even though 2 of them are turning out really quick. And then for the students, I would say whatever makes sense for who you guys want to talk to, but, any
So
thoughts on that?
even though those folks are turning out, there's a legislative session
No, absolutely,
That'd be
absolutely,
before their term is over.
absolutely.
So, yeah. So I agree with Alton. I think our representatives, we want to try to have everyone together for that.
So then the only other thing I just want to spend a minute on here is if the trustees have, in conversation in the time since we last met, had any legislative priorities going in mind that you care to put on the table today so that we can prepare ourselves around that. Our traditional situation has been to tie back to what we supported previously and obviously stick with some support that was an issue before. I think also we go and carry the CCLC and ACCT message in our hands as well. So if there's anything in particular you want to highlight or mention at this point, it's good to hear.
Well, I'm obsessed with housing for students who are housing challenged, so I don't know how we can raise that or elevate that in Sacramento, but whatever we can do.
Perfect. Probably not for this budget year, but at least
Yeah.
put it, get someone to talk about it.
Long year.
Well, I'll give you a quick synopsis of what I learned at the session they had, because they did have a lobbyist there, about the housing bill that's already passed. So they allocated money, they budgeted money, they allocated money to 7 projects in what they call round 1. Then they have 12 projects in round 2 for a total of 19, but they haven't allocated the funding yet to the 12. And those 7 plus those 12 equals 19, of which the latter 12 may or may not get their funding. And that was only about half of the budget amount, and the rest of it, they're going to take it back.
Yeah. This is
So-
the prior bill.
The prior bill. So one thing that we can lobby for, and it was a one-time funding, so it's not an ongoing, and it's a one-time funding out of the prior budget year. So we should lobby to keep that one-time funding out of the prior budget year, which was a budget surplus year, intact and available to be allocated to projects. Now, whether we, PCC, will get one of those projects or not is you've got to be like shovel ready. So I don't know, maybe we don't want to expend our lobbying energy on that. But that's something that as a statewide group, we should be lobbying for.
Yeah. Not to drill too deep on this one issue, when they did pass, and this is a separate bill, or maybe well, did around the same time, a housing planning grants. I know we did get some money for that. I'm just curious on how we've utilized those funds.
We have been looking for a way to, quite frankly.
Yeah.
We have a housing planning grant of $50,000.
That's right, that's
We've made a couple of overtures to folks who can help us navigate our unique housing situation here in Pasadena because we don't have the facility to build, we don't have the space to dedicate to that, and it's a city of partnerships. So there's an understanding of how to put that to use.
Great.
To date, it remains budgeted.
We saw it.
Perfect.
I think, and there's probably more modest levels of investment for the kinds of projects that we're working on now, like the heritage the heritage housing, and also the what are they calling it,
Hope housing.
hope housing or whatever. I mean, those those are smaller projects, but maybe at least in the short term.
Housing of a similar type for PCC students, particularly coming out of foster youth programs and other economically disadvantaged students. And I can't remember, do you remember the unit count for that?
It was
We'll call
larger.
that,
I think it was
yeah, it was bigger. I'll call that phase 2
Yeah.
because we will call it. I can't remember.
Just bring us back to thinking about what we were, any other topics that we,
I'm interested in a topic which I was going to put it on for next agenda, but BA, a bachelor, I was going to put on for the next agenda to get a report on where we're, because I heard in one of these reports that we got about the discussions that are ongoing and which ones have been approved and where the things are. And
So we have a current project that has received a great deal of opposition from the CSU, but it is still in play. It has not yet been officially denied. And even if it is denied, we did make some modifications to the project after consulting with our CSU colleagues. I'm not sure that it's going to be enough, but I had a conversation, or we spoke with the Pasadena Bioscience Collaborative and the leadership there, and they had some ideas about how to modify the proposal to get it passed. There's a former PCC faculty member that moved to, is it Valley?
Yes.
And they were able actually to get a biomanufacturing BA degree approved. And so we'll work on that. And I'm currently in the process of putting together a meeting with the key biotech faculty at Pomona, LA, and Northridge, because all three of those campuses are opposed. And we really need to talk to them first, have them help us craft the BA program so that then when we go to them,
They won't reject it.
they won't reject it. We sort of did it, I think it was done the other way around. And so, so we're doing that, but we also, if I can talk about some of the other projects that we're doing, we're in down the road fairly significantly now with Cal Poly Pomona on a joint BA degree, which would be a completely different model, which is not something that the CSU and the community colleges are doing at this point. So we'll have, you know, there are other ways that we can get our students a BA degree. And I think it's really important to build relationships with the campuses that are opposed to these things. And if we can build these relationships with them, then they'll be excited and enthusiastic when we actually convert it or, you know, work through it. So we're doing that. We got a conversation with Pomona that we've had, probably a half dozen meetings with them. We've got a dean and a president that are really excited about it. This will turn into a pre-law philosophy program, so we're going a completely different sort of direction with this. And then we're also having a conversation with Cal State LA as well on one of these programs, but we're going to do one at a time.
So, Steve, go ahead.
We should get legislators to pass legislation to make it easier for community colleges to have bachelorette
I
programs.
see you nodding from Carol, so yeah.
Well, you should, there's a
A lot of opposition from the other systems.
So in fact,
Yes, if I can just interject really quickly. I recently was sitting in a meeting with Assembly Higher Education consultants sharing that they've been hearing from community colleges across the state, the Chancellor's Office, the League, many advocates talking about the need for this. And so we anticipate someone's going to introduce something. It's just a matter of what that's going to look like, because we have actually voiced the need to have an actual approval process or a form of, to talk about the ones that don't get approved automatically or quickly enough, because if in this universe of CSU courses, they believe that something's duplicative, they don't have to actually give a reason to deny a course rather than just say it's duplicative. And so we're really trying to work with other advocates to figure out what that's going to look like. So hopefully something will be in the works that we can promote or support down the line.
So, Dr. Gomez, what are the courses that we'd like to see for your degree programs? I heard you mention bio, but then you mentioned pre-law.
So the other BA program that we're currently developing for the next round, which would be this next year, is a health sciences program. You know, one of the advantages that I have is that I was on the other side saying no to these things. Actually, I wasn't saying no to these things. I thought it was a kind of a silly fight because, you know, I mean, so I think part of the problem is that there's not very much conversation between folks. So there are certain words that set people off. There are certain phrases. There are certain, like our biotech degree talks a lot about research and graduate study preparation, and that with the faculty in the CSU, they just, you know, so we have to, you know, why not, don't pick the scab, just, you know. So the health sciences degree would be a more general kind of, almost like a health technology management administration kind of degree, more of like a vocational sort of management degree. Really only have enough bandwidth to work on one at a time. So that's the next one, and we're already in the middle of those conversations. And what I've advised is, don't make it ours. Make it ours. I mean, we'll do it, but let's work with the CSUs that are in our area from the get-go, and have them be part of the committee that's helping develop it, because those will be the people that will oppose it. And
So, a few years back, there were 15 programs that were approved essentially on an experimental basis. This is statewide. Have any other bachelor's degrees in community colleges been approved since that original 15? How many are out there now, if we know?
I'm happy to provide that to you.
Yeah, I was just curious.
I would say it's in the 30s.
I would think it's,
Yeah, and
So,
there's been a couple of, I mean,
some of them are getting through.
yeah, some of them are getting through, and some are not getting through. And in fact, the most recent legislative communication was like a cease and desist letter from the chairs of the Assembly and the Senate to the California community colleges saying, no, you can't do that. So it's a really, look, the CSU had this exact same fight with the UC system with regard to doctorates. And it wasn't until they worked on joint degrees that they ended up finally sort of saying, okay, this isn't a threat.
Now, Dr. Gomez, is the CSU system full? And by that I mean every year, do they take as many applicants as they can possibly accept? And they turn away people, do they have empty seats?
Right now, the CSU, I would say, is in a more difficult enrollment position than the community colleges. And remember, our enrollment challenges from 2 years ago and 3 years ago, that's hitting the CSU now. And
So they view all this as
it depends on things like, you know, there's been a lot of conversation about nursing, for example, because we don't have enough nursing spots. So community colleges are saying we can do BS degrees in nursing. And so those programs are heavily impacted at the CSU. The problem with nursing is, the reason why they're heavily impacted at the CSU is because they're probably the most expensive program that we operate. So saying that we can do it here would mean a significant investment by the state to build out those.
Because we don't get any extra apportionment dollars, regardless of whether it's a humanities class or.
And those want to call them dummies, but there's probably a better word for them.
Oh, like the simulation.
The simulation, human, those things are like $300,000 a piece. I mean, so when you see those out there and you see those are very sophisticated technological teaching tools.
Okay. All right.
Any other items? Oh,
Yeah.
yes, sir.
So, getting back to the Metro passes, I talked to Congressmember Schiff, and I said, what we need to do at the federal level is just tell every city, every county that is taking transit dollars from the feds, because that's how these projects get built, that one of the conditions is that they allow K-14 students to travel for free. And I know the systems are impacted is one way of looking at it, but the other way of looking at it is that there's excess capacity on these systems, so we're not, our marginal incremental lighters that are generated by the college system, the community college system, and universities are not impacting typically during rush hour, and they're not causing any incremental added cost. And the federal government should just tell cities and counties. So I'd like to, that was an informal conversation, I'd like to, and we all have to get together on this and get the federal, it's something they can do, it's something they should do. It doesn't cost them any money. They can just require that, and given all of the money they have given and continue to give to these systems, it's not an unreasonable requirement for them to tell that to their recipients of the federal money that makes these systems get built and into operations.
So here's a third way to deal with this transportation challenge. We are, I guess we could say fortunate that the county and LA and SCAG are in control of significant resources that were set aside for the 710 freeway. And those resources are now getting allocated to various projects. And
It's
so,
a great idea, and that's a good use of that pot of money.
right, so Alex actually went to a Metro meeting because we have this micro, what is it called again?
Metro Micro, it's their ride sharing program.
It's $1, right, to ride anywhere.
Within certain
Within, yeah.
Yeah, and so there was a threat that they weren't going to be able to do this because they weren't getting enough ridership to make it financially feasible, but they did extend it. They renewed it, and we were there, and we advocated on behalf of our PCC students, and they kept it. But I think that there's, and I know that we have another project that they're,
Yes, the bus.
thing. So we are receiving some of the benefits from this money that has been freed up, but I agree with you that, I mean, particularly with regard to climate change and sustainability, if they were able to allow or do something, and we have received, by the way, Cal State LA, and this is the way that the supervisors work, at Cal State LA, Hilda Solis would always subsidize those passes, right?
That's the
Yeah,
question.
UPass.
The UPass.
That's the question. Well, we have the UPass that we've been funding with CARES dollars. Why aren't we participating in the Metro Go Pass program that other campuses have been a part of?
I couldn't speak to the why. I know that we're in the UPass, and when it's not COVID, we could use student activity funds to help fund that. So, yeah.
Because I just don't, I think we've asked this in the past as to what the difference is between the Metro's own Go Pass program and our, because it's UPass, and we're funding it versus, I don't know how the Go Pass system works.
Yeah. I had a conversation with Metro recently where we talked about the number of passes they have. There's like 600 passes that they have with different arrangements for different places.
So,
They want some simplicity.
Sure.
And there might be a way where, just like this heritage housing, everybody has a little piece here, and then we lower the price, because we can't. At a certain point, we won't be able to continue to fund it, right? I mean, the students are also funding part of it, right? So maybe we can talk to Supervisor Barker.
Yeah, we're meeting with supervisors.
Oh wait, we're meeting.
We're meeting with
Wait,
Solis.
Solis in
Yeah.
a week.
Okay, so we'll bring it up to Solis.
We've brought that up to Margaret, and she's been favorable, but no, yeah.
It's
Supervisors
expensive.
have a lot of,
Well, I'm not sure that it is.
Well, I mean,
It's expensive for our students to pay the full price for those passes. I argue truly it doesn't cost anything.
But they're used to our revenue.
yeah. Well, supervisors do have a lot of discretionary authority within their own districts, so it's a choice that they will make.
That's
Whether
right.
they want to support our students or not when it comes to this.
Now's a good time for us to go
Yes.
ask her.
Any other items for conference, related things?
I would say anything else that supports student transportation. I know we just had a discussion about that, but. that's
We always
it.
bring a folder,
Right.
for sure, and I know we'll continue to do that. And yeah, anything else that you guys come up with for on your end too, please share that with us. Because I know, as we head into these meetings in January, I'm sure we'll take the CCLC recommendation and take a look at them. Because we're probably not gonna read all 30 of the things that they're going to, so we can incorporate and adjust based on this feedback.
And again, just to give an overview of how it'll work, I'm going to be working with Carol and her team, David and her team, and Strategic Education Services, also bringing the students along. I'm giving the feedback today to put some meat on these bones and provide you guys some background for us.
And having some of that information before we go up there would be helpful, just to
Yeah.
And if we need to call a meeting, we can, but I feel like we've already talked through
You're
it.
getting the next agenda item, actually, if you'd like to.
So, proposed future, the meeting schedule. Excuse me.
If you would like to have a meeting before you go to January, we could try to get put together,
Sometimes what we do is we meet on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
At the conference, that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking.
At the conference hotel.
Because at that point, we're just coordinating what we're saying versus.
Is CCLC going to issue talking points before the start of the conference?
It's a good question.
I don't know.
My experience has been that you get there, you get them, but it could be that they're available a few days before.
It'd be helpful, so
Yeah.
we could take a look at compare notes.
Of course.
And, depending on how Sacramento goes, we could have a meeting between that and, if there's time between that and Washington.
It's close.
It's very tight.
Yeah. If we wanted to meet before the conferences, I would recommend we do
Just
something
do it before.
prior to January. Somewhere before the January one, before the 28th of January. That would be.
Yeah.
We could also meet
More time.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let's.
in DC, right? Is everybody going? It sounds like everyone's going to be
Not
there.
everybody, but we can, we'll communicate through, Alex and Dr. Gomez on this, but I think what we've done in the past is just coordinate as we're there.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay, and proposed future agenda items, I know Trustee Gibson had already mentioned VA degrees.
But let's do it again,
Yeah.
because there's a lot that I'm very curious, and I've got some calls into various folks, because I'm trying to see if we can get ours approved.
Awesome. Great, so we're now at our last point, adjournment. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
We are adjourned.
Approved.
Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Sabrina.
Bye, thank you so much, Dr. Goldie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Do you go by Belle? Okay. Bellefontaine is beautiful,